Alright guys, welcome back. GM Light here. Today we're going to be talking about the original Pet Sematary, one of my all-time favorites. I've been looking forward to talk about this movie all year, knowing that a prequel was coming out and that it was the perfect opportunity to talk about this original movie. The thing about this 1989 movie is that it has the distinction, that and The Shining, of they're both my favorite Stephen King adaptions, in the way that I think that both movies are my favorite adaptions of King books, but they're also my favorite adaptions and my two favorite Stephen King stories. And if you don't know what Pet Sematary 1989 is about, it's about when Dr. Lewis Creed moves his family to Maine, where he meets a friendly local man named Judd Crandall. After Creed's cat is accidentally killed, Crandall advises Lewis to bury it in the ground near the old Pet Sematary. Cat returns to life, personality changed for the worse. When Lewis's son Gage dies tragically, Lewis decides to bury the boy's body in the same ground despite the warnings of Crandall and Lewis's visions of a deceased patient. So right off the bat, what I think is so special about this movie is just how effective it is. A really compelling story. It has a lot of layers to it and it has a lot to say when it comes to grief, when it comes to trauma, stuff like that, because it doesn't work just as a horror movie. I think it works really well as a drama, and a really distressing one at that. I think it does well by really spending time with this family for a while in the movie, and it familiarizes you with their dynamic and kind of the sense of normalcy that they have operating as a family. And then when it comes to all of the terrible things that happen, you see the destruction of that family and then the consequences that ultimately reaps because Lewis can't let go. It works so well because it really is about the lengths that people will go when they're desperate, when they're grief-stricken, when they lose the thing that is most precious to them. And the part of the story that's so disturbing about it is that it really forces you to think and put yourself in Lewis's shoes, make you think about this situation, about what you would do if you had this chance, this second chance to bring back somebody you love. Would you take it, even not knowing that they would come back the same? Is that second chance worth it, or is it better to accept things and learn to cope with the tragedy of what's happened? These are the themes that make it such an iconic story and what makes it so effective and compelling. It goes to really dark places. It crosses lines that a lot of movies don't, but it's all serving a story. This isn't a very typical horror movie. There's a lot more to it, and you feel so much emotion throughout the entirety of the whole movie. I also think part of that too is that the fact that the family feels so organic. You kind of feel like you're just a fly on the wall watching this family. Although it's going to be kind of dated because it's from the 80s, it doesn't really feel cheesy, and you do latch on to them and you really feel for Lewis when tragedy strikes. As well as that, obviously Fred Gwynn's Judd Crandall has so much charisma. He's great in this role. There's so much charm to him. He elicits a lot of emotion and also has a whole lot of quirks to him that just make him to be a fascinating and enjoyable character to watch. He's going to be my favorite. He's just a great fan favorite character from this movie, and everything about him so entertaining. He's very interesting. He makes you wonder about the history of this town and his own personal history, so it just makes for a performance that's pretty magnetic to watch, especially since they could have relegated him to just be a person who spews exposition and doesn't really offer anything interesting to the story. But they don't do that. They actually make him, in and of himself, an interesting character. One that plays really well off of Lewis Creed. It's just so much personality spewing out of him that even an actor as incredible as John Lithgow couldn't really measure up to Fred Gwynn's Judd Crandall. And we're talking about a world-class actor. It's just the way that he played him is so unique, and I think that that's something that can't be replicated. And then with Lewis, who's pretty much the star of the movie, you experience his full range of emotion. I think that this is a role that requires a lot, especially on that emotion end to it, because you have to play out the full range. You have to play out the family man aspect. You got to play out the grief-stricken side of it when he loses Gage, kind of the sympathy and curiosity that comes with when Church dies and he ends up following Judd to bury it, kind of the side that gets stricken with some mania and decides to do the unthinkable by digging up Gage and burying him in the Pet Sematary. And throughout all of it, he convinces you that he would be that desperate to bring back his son and do this. You don't doubt it for a second. You really feel it, and you feel that full range come through and seep through in the performance. Some people think it's a little hacky because he was a soap opera actor, but I found it all convincing, and he's another integral part to the story that just contributes to how much I love this movie. It's not an easy role to pull off when you have such dark themes and you could be convincing with that role. it's extremely commendable. The desperation that he shows about wanting to be made whole again by bringing his son back, you really feel for him, and even rewatching the movie knowing how terribly things go, you want him to be made whole again, and you almost still hope that it works, knowing damn well the movie's not going to change, obviously. A movie like this could have risked being way too much or gratuitous because the themes are very dark, very bleak, and sometimes that's just too much and it crosses into being very unenjoyable. But this movie provides compelling drama, it provides very dark, thought-provoking themes that stick with you. And I think it's because it has that high amount of emotional complexity to it. Again, it puts you in this same situation and makes you really think about it. There's a lot of weight to his decision. They don't make it flippantly. And the idea of him having to deal with what is essentially something evil puppeting around his son's body to do terrible things, and those further consequences that come with the fact that he couldn't let go. It's all so dark, so bleak, but it makes for incredible storytelling and it makes for very effective drama. And the fact that it agonizes so much in the decision that Lewis makes, I think just makes it even better. That's what has you asking yourself if you do the same. And that's, I think, what really makes it stick with you. In this vulnerable state, you 100% understand why Lewis would do what he does, but it's also damn upsetting to watch. I don't really have any negatives for this movie. Some of it just doesn't hold up as well because the movie's a little bit old, but that stuff doesn't really distract me or bother me while I'm watching the movie. All the characters are perfectly cast. Everything works out very well. They hit all the right emotions. They make you feel exactly what they're going for. Sometimes these movies that are trying to pull a big emotional moment, something like the scream when Gage gets hit by the truck, that could have been incredibly cheesy and silly. Could have been something that makes people laugh if it was executed poorly, but this movie balances it all properly. And that's why I think that one of the best King adaptions coming from some of the best King source material. So Pet Sematary 89, one of my favorite movies. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'd love to hear. Are you as much of a fan of Pet Sematary as I am? I'm GM Light. Have a good one.